Let me ask you something. What if the one thing standing between you and the life you actually want is not hard work, not talent, not connections, not money, but your relationship with a single four-letter word? What if that word has been quietly running your life, shaping every decision you make, every opportunity you avoid, every dream you've quietly buried under the excuse of not the right time? That word is risk. And here's what nobody tells you. The people who win in life, the ones with the freedom, the money, the confidence, the success, they don't avoid risk. They don't just tolerate it either. They use it. They've learned something that most people never figure out, that uncertainty is not your enemy. Uncertainty is actually the door. And today, you and I are going to walk through it together. Stay with me for the next 30 minutes, because by the end of this video, you're going to see risk in a completely different way, and that shift could genuinely change the trajectory of your entire life. Let's go. Think about the people around you. Some of them are living lives they chose, and some of them, maybe even you, are living lives that just happened to them. They took the safe job because it was stable. They stayed in the relationship that wasn't right because starting over felt terrifying. They didn't start the business, didn't move to the city, didn't say what they really felt because risk felt too dangerous. And here's what's heartbreaking about that. Playing it safe feels like protection, but over time, it becomes a prison. This video is for anyone who has ever had a dream and talked themselves out of it. Anyone who's ever stood at a crossroads and chosen the road they didn't really want just because it felt safer. Anyone who is tired of watching other people live boldly while they stay stuck. The biggest mistake most people make when it comes to risk, they think it's a personality trait. Like some people are born bold and others are born cautious. Like risk is something you either have in your DNA or you don't. That's completely wrong. Risk is a skill. And like any skill, it can be understood, practiced, and mastered. By the time we're done here, you'll have a completely new framework for making decisions, taking chances, and designing a life that actually belongs to you. Let's get into the first big idea. If this already sounds like something you needed to hear, drop a fire in the comments. Let's keep going. Here's the first thing you need to understand, and this alone is worth the next 30 minutes of your life. Risk is not about danger. Risk is about distance. Let me explain. Most of us have been taught to see risk as this dangerous thing, like a cliff edge or a minefield. Like if you take a risk, something terrible might happen to you. And because of that framing, we avoid it. We stay back. We watch from a distance. But here's what that framing gets completely wrong. When you avoid risk, you're not standing still. You're actually moving, just backward or sideways, into someone else's life, into someone else's plan for you. Every decision you don't make is still a decision. Every risk you don't take still has a cost. Here's a real-life way to think about it. Imagine two people. Let's call them Arjun and Rahul. Both of them have a business idea they believe in. Both of them have the skills. Both of them have the dream. Arjun says, it's too risky. What if I fail? What if I lose money? What if people judge me? He waits, he prepares, he almost launches 3 times. 5 years go by. He's still in the same job, same salary, same frustration, but now also with 5 years of regret. Rahul says, what's the risk if I don't try? He launches. It's messy. It's scary. He makes mistakes, but after 2 years, he's earning more than he ever did working for someone else, doing something that actually excites him. Same starting point, totally different lives. The difference wasn't talent, wasn't connections, wasn't luck. It was who understood risk better. Now, here's the common mistake. People think risk-taking means recklessness, like jumping off a cliff and hoping there's water below. That's not what we're talking about. Smart risk-taking is calculated. It's not, I'm going to bet everything on a coin toss. It's, I'm going to understand the downside, prepare for it, and then move. The question is never, is this risky? The real question is, what happens if I don't do this? And what happens if I do? And which one can I live with more? That reframe alone changes everything. Tonight, write down one thing you've been avoiding because it feels risky. Then write down the real cost of not doing it. Not the imagined danger of doing it, the actual cost of staying where you are. Look at that number. That's the risk of playing it safe. This is where most people's minds get completely blown. Keep watching. Let me tell you a story. There was once a man who wanted to become a musician. He was talented, genuinely, deeply talented. His friends knew it, his family knew it, even he knew it somewhere deep inside. But every time he sat down to seriously pursue it, his brain would give him a very reasonable list of objections. The music industry is tough. Only a few people actually make it. I have responsibilities.
I should be more practical. Maybe after I save more money. Maybe when the timing is better. Sound familiar? Here's the thing that's terrifying about this story. Every single one of those reasons sound logical, rational, responsible even. But they were all just fear wearing a business suit. This is what psychologists call rationalization, when your emotions make the decision first, and then your brain writes the justification afterward. You feel afraid, and your brilliant mind immediately starts generating very convincing reasons why that fear makes total sense. The result? You never move, and you feel perfectly reasonable about it. Here's how this connects to money, career, and life. Think about how many people have stayed in a job that was slowly draining their soul, not because they couldn't leave, but because their fear generated 100 logical reasons to stay. Job security, benefits. What would I even do? The market is tough. I'll wait until next year. And next year becomes the year after, and then a decade passes. Or think about relationships. How many people stay in situations that aren't working because their fear dressed itself up as loyalty, responsibility, or practicality? Here's the truth that cuts right through it all. If your reasons for not taking a risk would still feel true no matter what the risk was, they're not reasons. They're a pattern. There will always be uncertainty. There will always be a better time that never quite arrives. There will always be a reason not to. The question is whether you're deciding from your vision or from your fear. How do you tell the difference? Here's a simple test. Ask yourself, if I knew I would succeed, if success was absolutely guaranteed, would I still have these objections? If the answer is no, if the objections disappear the moment you remove the uncertainty, then those objections were never logic. They were fear, dressed up in a very convincing costume. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. Connection to money and career, the biggest financial opportunities in most people's lives came wrapped in uncertainty. Starting a business, investing early, taking the higher paying job that came with more responsibility, saying yes to the project that felt too big. The people who took those opportunities didn't have less fear. They just learned to tell the difference between fear as logic and actual legitimate caution. That distinction, right there, is the difference between a good life and a great one. What we're about to get into next is the psychological truth about why winners think differently. You don't want to skip this. Here's an uncomfortable truth. Every person you admire who is living a bold, successful life, they have failed. A lot. Not in spite of their success, but almost because of it. And yet we look at successful people and somehow our brains erase all that failure. We see the result and forget the journey. We see the highlight reel and assume their path was smoother than ours. It wasn't. The psychological insight here is this. The winners don't just have a different relationship with success. They have a fundamentally different relationship with failure. For most people, failure is an identity statement. I failed becomes I am a failure. It feels permanent. It feels defining. And because of that weight, the idea of risking failure becomes unbearable. But for people who consistently take risks and succeed over time, failure is just data. It's information. It's feedback. It's the universe telling you that specific approach didn't work. Try a different angle. Let me give you an analogy that makes this very concrete. Think about a GPS navigation system in a car. You're driving and you miss a turn. What does the GPS do? Does it say, you missed the turn, you're a terrible driver, this whole trip was a mistake, just car? No, of course not. It immediately says, recalculating. In 200 meters, turn right. It doesn't panic, it doesn't catastrophize, it doesn't quit. It just adjusts, recalculates, and keeps guiding you toward the destination. That is exactly how people who are skilled at risk-taking treat setbacks. They don't experience failure as a verdict on their worth or their potential. They experience it as a recalculation. They ask, what did I learn? What do I adjust? What's the next move? Now, here's the uncomfortable truth, the one that separates winners from average people. Most people quit not when they fail. They quit before they fail, because the anticipation of failure is worse than failure itself. Think about that. They never even take the shot because in their imagination, they've already failed, already been judged, already been embarrassed. The failure hasn't happened, but they're already experiencing it emotionally. This is called preemptive surrender, and it is the biggest dream killer there is. The person who takes the risk, fails, and learns something, they are infinitely further ahead than the person who never took the risk at all, because the first person has real information. The second person only has fear. The mindset shift is this. Stop asking, what if I fail? Start asking, what will I learn when this doesn't work perfectly, and how fast can I adjust? Because here's what you find when you live that way. Failure stops being a destination. It becomes part of the journey, and your fear of it slowly loses its power over you. That is what separates the people who eventually win from those who stay stuck. Not talent, not luck, not better circumstances. Just this one fundamental shift in how they interpret setbacks.
Here's the deep lesson, the one that most summaries miss, the one that once you really hear it is going to stick with you for a long time. There is a risk that most people never calculate, never think about, never even acknowledge. It's not the risk of failing. It's not the risk of being judged. It's the risk of reaching the end of your life and realizing you never really lived it. I want you to sit with that for a second, because here's what's interesting. We spend enormous amounts of mental energy calculating the risks of action. What if I start this business and it fails? What if I invest and I lose money? What if I take this leap and it doesn't work out? But we almost never spend that same energy calculating the risks of inaction. What is the risk of staying in that unfulfilling job for another 10 years? What is the risk of never launching the thing you've been dreaming about? What is the risk of always playing it safe, always being responsible, always waiting for the perfect moment that never comes? The risk of inaction is not abstract. It's very, very real. It shows up in your body, in the low-grade anxiety you can't quite name, in the restlessness at 2 a.m., in the feeling that something is off, even when nothing is technically wrong. That is the cost of uncalculated risk, the risk you've been accumulating in silence. Now, here's where people misuse this concept, and it's important to be clear about this. Hearing this doesn't mean you should throw caution to the wind. It doesn't mean every risk is worth taking. It doesn't mean burn your life down and figure it out later. The correct application is this. Before you decide whether to take a risk or not, before you make any significant decision, you must honestly calculate both sides of the ledger. Side 1, what's the realistic worst case if this doesn't work? Can I survive it? Can I recover? What are the actual concrete costs? Side 2, what is the realistic cost of not doing this? A year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? What does my life look like if I keep choosing the comfortable option over the meaningful one? When you do that calculation honestly, when you really look at both sides, something fascinating happens. The risks you were terrified of often look a lot smaller than you thought, because worst cases are rarely as catastrophic as your imagination makes them. You're resilient. You're more capable than your fear gives you credit for. And the risks of inaction, they often look a lot bigger than you ever acknowledged. That recalibration is the beginning of wisdom. And here's the one thing to remember from this section. The person who never takes risks does not avoid loss. They just lose differently, slowly, quietly, and without ever getting the chance to win. Okay, enough ideas. Let's make this real. Here is a 7-day plan for you to start applying everything we've talked about. Simple, practical, and designed for real people with real lives. Day 1, map your avoided risks. Take 15 minutes. Write a list of every opportunity, decision, or conversation you've been avoiding because it feels risky. No judgment, no editing. Just get it all on paper. Seeing it clearly is the first step. Day 2, calculate both sides. Pick one item from your day 1 list, the one that has the most emotional charge. Now do the honest math. Write down the realistic worst-case scenario if you act. Then write down what your life looks like in 3 years if you don't act. Read both. Really read them. Day 3, name the fear behind the logic. Go back to the logical reasons you've been using to stay safe. Apply the test we discussed. Would these objections vanish if success was guaranteed? If yes, write down what the actual fear is. Name it. I'm afraid of judgment. I'm afraid of failure. I'm afraid I'm not good enough. Naming fear reduces its power over you. Day 4, take one small uncomfortable action. Not the big leap yet, just one small action that your fear has been blocking. Send the email, make the call, submit the application, have the conversation. Something that scares you just a little. This builds your risk tolerance muscle. Day 5, study someone who took the risk. Find one person, real, living, someone you know or someone public, who took a significant risk and came out stronger for it, even if the risk didn't go perfectly at first. Study how they handled uncertainty. What was their mindset? What did they do when things went sideways? Let their story expand your own sense of what's possible. Day 6, design your acceptable worst case. For the biggest risk you've been avoiding, write out your personal acceptable worst case plan. Not everything will work out perfectly, but if the worst happens, here is exactly how I will handle it and recover. Having a recovery plan takes most of the terror out of the decision. It turns the unknown into something manageable. Day 7, make the decision. After 6 days of clarity, information, and preparation, make the call. Commit to either taking the risk you've been avoiding or consciously letting it go. Both are valid. The important thing is that you decide from clarity, not from default, not from fear, not from delay. Your life belongs to you. Act accordingly. We're almost done, but I've saved the most important thing for last, the mindset shift that ties everything together. Don't leave yet. I want to leave you with this. There's a version of your life that exists, a version where you made the call, where you started the thing, where you had the conversation, where you took the leap and found out what you were actually made of. That version isn't gone. It's just waiting. Every single day, you're either moving toward it or moving away from it. There is no standing still in life. Time is always moving.
And with every day that passes in waiting and hesitation and not yet, that version of your life gets a little harder to reach. But here's what I want you to know. You are not behind. You are not too late. You are not too old, too inexperienced, too broke, or too anything. You are exactly where you are, and from right here, you can begin. The people who built extraordinary lives didn't have a guarantee. They didn't have certainty. They didn't have a map. They just had enough courage to take one step into the uncertainty, and then another, and then another. That courage is available to you, right now, today. Not when you feel ready, because you will never feel ready for the things that truly matter. Readiness is a myth. Action is real. The most powerful risk you can take is the risk of actually showing up for your own life, of deciding that comfort is no longer enough, that safety without meaning is its own kind of loss. You have something to offer this world, a business, a story, a skill, a dream, an idea that keeps coming back to you no matter how many times you push it away. That's not an accident. That's a signal. The question is, are you finally going to listen to it? Risk isn't the enemy. Regret is the enemy. And regret is what you're left with when you let fear make all your decisions. Don't give fear that power anymore. All right, if something in this video hit you, if one idea, one story, one moment made you see yourself or your situation differently, then I want you to do 3 things right now. First, hit that like button. It sounds small, but it genuinely helps this video reach more people who need to hear it. Second, subscribe if you haven't already. Every week, we break down ideas from the world's most powerful books on success, mindset, and financial freedom in a way that's actually practical and actually applicable to your real life. And third, and this is the one I really care about, drop a comment below. Tell me, what was the one thing from this video that hit you the hardest? What's the risk you've been avoiding? What's the first step you're going to take? Write it down in the comments, because when you say it out loud, even in a comment, it becomes real. And real is where change starts. I'll see you in the next one. And remember, the life you want is on the other side of the fear you keep running from. Go get it.